Would you still help someone if it cost you everything? The rain fell in thin, slanted lines across the dimly lit street, tapping softly against the cracked pavement like a quiet warning no one was listening to. The neon sign above the corner cafe flickered, buzzing faintly, casting a tired glow over the empty sidewalk. Inside, the warmth didn't reach far. Lily Carter stood behind the counter, her fingers wrapped around a paper cup that had long gone cold, her shoulders tight beneath a faded gray sweater that had seen better winters. The clock on the wall read 9:47 p.m. Her shift had ended 17 minutes ago, but she hadn't moved. Not yet, because leaving meant going back to a place that barely felt like home anymore, a one-bedroom apartment she was 3 days away from losing. She swallowed hard, glancing down at the small envelope tucked into her apron pocket. Inside was exactly $20. Her last $20. Rent was overdue. The electricity bill sat unopened on the kitchen counter. And her younger sister, Emma, needed her medication by Friday. Lily exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the glass of the front door as she stared out into the rain, her reflection staring back, tired eyes, damp strands of hair clinging to her cheeks, a quiet kind of exhaustion that didn't ask for sympathy anymore. Just survival. The bell above the door chimed softly. She turned. A man stepped inside, hesitating just past the threshold like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. His clothes were worn, damp from the rain, his jacket too thin for the cold. His hair clung slightly to his forehead, and there was something in his eyes. Not desperation, not quite. Just weariness. The kind that settled deep. He looked around briefly before approaching the counter, his steps careful, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, steady but strained. "I know you're probably closing, but could I just get a coffee?" Lily blinked, instinctively reaching for a cup. "Sure," she said softly. "It's still hot." She poured it, sliding it toward him, watching as his hands hovered over it for a moment before wrapping around the warmth like it was something rare. He hesitated. Again, then looked up at her, something shifting behind his eyes. "I don't have any money on me," he admitted, the words quiet, almost reluctant. "I thought I did, but I must have lost my wallet somewhere." Lily's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the counter. Her mind moved fast. Rent, bills, Emma, the envelope in her pocket. $20. That was all she had left. She should say no. She needed to say no. But she didn't. Instead, she studied him for just a second longer. The way he stood. The way he didn't push, didn't beg. Just waited. As if he already expected the answer. Lily reached into her apron slowly, pulling out the envelope. Her heart thudded once, hard. Then again. "It's okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she slid the cup closer to him. "You can have it." He stared at her, surprised, like he hadn't expected that. Like no one ever said yes. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. Lily nodded, forcing a small, tired smile. Everyone deserves at least one warm thing on a night like this. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain continued outside, steady, relentless. And somewhere between the silence and the steam rising from that cup of coffee, something changed. Something neither of them could see yet. But it had already begun. The man did not drink the coffee right away. He just stood there, both hands wrapped around the cup, as if he was memorizing the warmth instead of using it. Lily noticed it without meaning to. There was something careful about him, something deliberate, like every movement had weight. "Thank you," he said after a moment, his voice quieter now, steadier. Lily nodded once, already turning away to wipe down the counter, pretending she had not just given away the last safety net she had. "It is just coffee," she replied, though both of them knew it was not. The cafe door creaked open again, letting in a gust of cold air along with the sharp scent of rain. Mr. Dalton, the night manager, stepped in, shaking droplets off his coat, his eyes scanning the room with the kind of impatience that never really left his face. "We are closed," he called out automatically, then paused when he saw the man at the counter. His expression tightened. "What is this?" he muttered, walking closer, his gaze shifting between Lily and the stranger. "I thought I told you we do not serve people after closing." Lily straightened slightly, her fingers curling around the edge of the counter. "He just needed a coffee," she said, keeping her tone calm, even though her heart had started to beat a little faster. Mr. Dalton frowned, looking the man up and down, his judgment quick and unfiltered. And is he paying for it? He asked sharply. The silence that followed was brief but heavy. The man did not speak. He did not defend himself. He simply lowered his gaze slightly, as if he had already accepted whatever was coming next. Lily inhaled quietly. I covered it, she said. Mr. Dalton's head snapped toward her. You what? I paid for it, she repeated, her voice soft but steady. The manager let out a short, disbelieving laugh. With what money, Lily? Because last time I checked, you were the one asking for extra shifts just to keep up. Lily felt the words land, but she did not step back. It is just one coffee. It is not about the coffee, he snapped. It is about policy. It is about not turning this place into a free shelter. The man shifted slightly, as if to leave, but Lily spoke before he could. He is not causing any trouble, she said, her voice firmer now. He asked politely. He did not demand anything. Mr. Dalton crossed his arms, his expression hardening. And you think that is enough? Lily met his eyes. For a second, everything else seemed to fade. The rain, the empty tables, the clock ticking on the wall. Yes, she said quietly. I do. The room fell still. The man looked at her then, really looked at her, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Mr. Dalton exhaled sharply through his nose. You want to play hero, fine, he said, his tone flat. But do not expect me to reward it. He glanced at the register, then back at her. That coffee is coming out of your pay. Lily nodded once. Okay. And if this happens again, he added, you are done here. Lily did not hesitate. It will not. Mr. Dalton gave a final, dismissive look before turning away, heading toward the back office. The tension in the room lingered even after he disappeared. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain against the windows again. The man finally took a sip of the coffee, his hands still steady, his expression thoughtful now. You should not have done that, he said quietly. Lily gave a small shrug, reaching for a clean cloth just to keep her hands busy. Maybe not, she admitted. But it felt wrong not to. He studied her for a second longer, as if trying to understand something deeper than her words. Then he reached into his pocket, pulling out nothing, his fingers brushing empty fabric, almost like a reflex. He paused, then gave a faint, almost apologetic smile. I will pay you back, he said. Lily shook her head gently. You do not have to. He held her gaze for a moment. I will, he said, more certain this time. And then, without another word, he turned and walked back out into the rain, the door closing softly behind him. Lily stood there, watching the glass for a second longer, her reflection staring back at her again. Her pocket felt lighter now, empty, but for some reason she could not explain, it did not feel like she had lost something. Not yet. The rain had not stopped by the time Lily finally stepped out of the cafe, locking the door behind her with a soft click that echoed louder than it should have in the quiet street. The neon sign above flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale glow over the wet pavement. She pulled her sweater tighter around herself, the cold biting sharper now that the warmth inside was gone, and for a brief second, she wondered if she had made a mistake. $20. That was not just money. That was groceries. That was bus fare. That was one more day of breathing room she no longer had. She slipped her hands into her pockets out of habit, only to feel the emptiness where the envelope had been, and her chest tightened slightly. It is fine, she whispered to herself, though the words did not carry much weight. You will figure it out. She always did. That was what survival looked like. One decision at a time, even when none of them made sense on paper. The walk home took just under 12 minutes, but tonight it felt longer. The sidewalks were nearly empty, the sound of distant traffic softened by the rain, and every passing car sent a faint spray of water onto the curb. When she reached her building, the flickering hallway light greeted her like it always did, buzzing faintly as she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of old paint and something she could never quite place. Upstairs, in apartment 3B, a soft light glowed under the door. Lily paused for a second before turning the knob. Inside, the small space felt even smaller tonight. A couch that had seen too many nights of restless sleep, a narrow kitchen counter cluttered with unopened mail, and near the window, Emma sat wrapped in a blanket, her shoulders slightly hunched, a book resting loosely in her lap. You are late, Emma said gently, looking up with a small smile that tried to hide concern. Lily forced one back. Just cleaning up after closing, she replied, slipping off her shoes near the door. Emma studied her for a moment, then tilted her head slightly. Did something happen? Lily hesitated, just for a second. Then she shook her head. No, just tired. She moved into the kitchen, reaching for a glass of water, her hands steady even though her thoughts were not. Emma did not press further, but her eyes lingered, as if she could sense the missing piece without knowing what it was. I called the pharmacy today, Emma said softly after a moment. They said the prescription is ready. Lily nodded slowly, her back turned. That is good. It costs $80, Emma added, her voice quieter now. Lily closed her eyes for half a second, just enough to feel it. $80. The number settled in her chest like a weight she could not ignore. I will take care of it, she said, turning back around with a calm she did not feel. Emma watched her carefully. You always say that. Lily smiled faintly, stepping closer and brushing a loose strand of hair away from Emma's face. And I always do, right? Emma did not answer right away. Instead, she reached out and took Lily's hand, her fingers warm despite everything. You should not have to do everything alone, she whispered. Lily squeezed her hand gently. I am not alone. But as she said it, her mind drifted back to the cafe, to the man standing quietly at the counter, to the way he had looked at her when she said yes. There had been something in his eyes. Not just gratitude. Something deeper. Something that lingered longer than it should have. Lily pulled her hand back gently and stepped away, grabbing the stack of mail from the counter, flipping through it quickly as if distraction could solve anything. Bills. Notices. Final reminders. She set them down again, untouched. Outside, the rain continued, steady and unrelenting, tapping softly against the window like a question that had not been answered yet. And somewhere across the city, a man who had walked into her life for less than 5 minutes was already rewriting everything she thought she understood about that night. She just did not know it yet. Morning came too quickly, thin sunlight slipping through the cracked blinds and stretching across the worn floor like it did not belong there. Lily woke before her alarm, her eyes opening to the quiet hum of the apartment and the faint sound of traffic outside. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of everything settle back into place. Rent. Bills. $80. The number returned immediately, sharp and uninvited. She exhaled slowly and pushed herself up, careful not to wake Emma, who was still asleep on the couch, her blanket pulled tightly around her shoulders. Lily moved quietly through the apartment, grabbing her bag and checking her phone. No new messages. No miracles. Just time moving forward whether she was ready or not. The air outside was colder than she expected, the rain gone, but leaving behind that damp chill that settled into everything. Counter, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as she stepped inside. You are early, he said flatly. Lily nodded once. I can start now if you need me to. He did not answer right away. Instead, he reached under the register and pulled out a small slip of paper, placing it on the counter between them. Lily glanced down. It was a printed notice. Her name at the top. Her chest tightened slightly before she even read the rest. I thought about what happened last night, Mr. Dalton said, his tone measured, almost detached. And I cannot have employees making independent decisions like that. It is not how this place runs. Lily swallowed, her fingers brushing the edge of the paper but not lifting it yet. I understand, she said quietly. No, he replied, shaking his head once. I do not think you do. He tapped the paper lightly. You are a good worker, Lily. You show up on time. You do your job. But this is a business, not a charity. Lily finally picked up the notice, her eyes scanning the words quickly. Terminated. Effective immediately. The word sat there, simple and final. For a second, everything else faded again, just like the night before, except this time there was no warmth, no quiet understanding behind it. Just consequence. I need the apron, Mr. Dalton added, his voice softer now, but no less firm. Lily stood there for a moment, the paper still in her hand, before she slowly untied the strings behind her back and placed the apron on the counter. It looked smaller now, like it did not belong to her anymore. I am sorry, she said, not because she regretted what she had done, but because she knew what this meant. Mr. Dalton gave a short nod, already turning away. Take care of yourself, he said, though it sounded more like habit than concern. Lily stepped back, her bag slipping over her shoulder as she walked toward the door. The bell chimed softly as she pushed it open, the sound strangely familiar and distant at the same time. Outside, the sky was a dull gray, the kind that made everything feel suspended, like the day had not fully decided what it was yet. Lily stood on the sidewalk, the termination notice still in her hand, her fingers tightening slightly around the paper. She had no job, no backup, and less than $0 to her name now. She should have felt panic, fear, regret, but instead, there was just a quiet, steady feeling settling in her chest. The same one she had felt the night before when she said yes. She folded the paper once, then again, slipping it into her bag before taking a slow breath. "You will figure it out," she whispered to herself again, the words sounding different now, heavier but still standing. She took a step forward, then another, moving down the street without looking back. What she did not see, just across the road, parked quietly along the curb, was a black sedan with tinted windows. And inside it, a man who had not stopped watching since the moment she walked out. The black sedan idled quietly at the curb, its engine a low, steady hum that blended into the background of the city. Inside, Ethan Cole sat motionless, his gaze fixed on the figure walking away down the sidewalk. Lily did not look back. Not once. He noticed that. Most people did. Most people hesitated, second-guessed, wondered if they had made the wrong choice. But she just kept walking, her shoulders slightly tense, her pace steady, like she had already accepted whatever came next. Ethan leaned back slightly in his seat, his fingers resting against the leather armrest, his expression unreadable but far from indifferent. "She lost her job," a voice said from the front seat. Claire, his assistant, glanced at him briefly through the rearview mirror before returning her attention to the tablet in her hands. "Effective immediately. Manager filed the report this morning." Ethan did not respond right away. His eyes remained on the empty stretch of sidewalk where Lily had disappeared around the corner. "Because of last night," Claire added, her tone careful, measured. That was when Ethan finally looked away. He exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening just slightly. "I saw," he said quietly. Claire hesitated for a moment, then continued. "Do you want me to step in? We can reverse the termination, or—" She let the sentence trail off, knowing he would fill in the rest. Ethan shook his head once. "Not yet." Claire frowned slightly, though she hid it well. "She is already struggling," she said. "Based on what we found, she is behind on rent, and her sister has an active prescription waiting at a pharmacy 3 blocks from her apartment. $80. Ethan's gaze sharpened slightly at that number, the same number that had echoed in Lily's apartment just hours ago. He tapped his fingers once against the armrest, a quiet rhythm that signaled thought more than impatience. "And she still helped," he murmured, almost to himself. Claire did not answer, because there was nothing to add to that. They both knew what it meant. Ethan leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, his eyes narrowing just a fraction as something shifted behind them. "Set up the next step," he said. Claire glanced back again. "You want to proceed?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." His voice was calm, controlled, but there was something else beneath it now. Something more certain. But no interference. No shortcuts. Claire hesitated. "You are going to let it play out?" "I need to know," Ethan said, his tone steady. "Not just what she does when it is easy. I need to see what she does when it costs her everything." Claire studied him for a second longer, then nodded slowly, tapping a few notes into her tablet. "Understood." The car remained still for another moment before Ethan finally leaned back again, his gaze drifting toward the city beyond the window. Tall buildings, glass reflecting the dull gray sky, people moving in every direction, each one carrying their own story, their own weight. But his focus had narrowed. It had been narrowing since the moment she said yes. She did not hesitate, he said quietly. Claire did not look up this time. "No," she replied. Ethan's lips pressed into a faint line, not quite a smile, not quite anything else. "Most people do." The driver glanced at him briefly. "Where to, sir?" Ethan paused for a fraction of a second before answering. "Headquarters," he said. The word carried a different weight than everything that had come before it. The car pulled smoothly into traffic, merging into the steady flow of the city. And somewhere just a few blocks away, Lily Carter walked forward with no idea that the worst part of her week was not the job she had just lost, but the test that was not over yet. By the time Lily reached the pharmacy, the sky had shifted from gray to a dull, washed-out blue that offered no warmth. only the illusion of a better day. The automatic doors slid open with a soft mechanical hum, and the familiar scent of antiseptic and paper greeted her as she stepped inside. For a moment, she stood near the entrance, her fingers tightening slightly around the strap of her bag, as if bracing herself for something she could not avoid. She already knew what the pharmacist was going to say. $80. The number echoed again, louder now, because this time it was not just a thought. It was real. It was waiting. Lily walked slowly toward the counter, her steps measured, her expression calm in the way people become when they have no room left for panic. A woman behind the counter looked up with a polite smile. "Hi there. How can I help you?" Lily swallowed once. "I am picking up a prescription," she said, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. She gave Emma's name, watching as the pharmacist typed it into the system, her eyes scanning the screen. "All right," the woman said after a moment, reaching behind her to retrieve a small white bag. "That will be $80. There it was. Lily nodded slightly, her hand already moving toward her pocket before stopping halfway. Empty. She knew it was empty. Still, her fingers lingered there for a second longer, as if something might appear if she waited just long enough. "Do you need a moment?" the pharmacist asked gently, noticing the hesitation. Lily forced a small smile. "Yes, just a second." She stepped aside, letting the next customer approach the counter, her heart beating a little faster now, not from fear, but from the quiet realization that she had reached the edge of what she could manage alone. She looked down at the floor, her mind moving through options that did not exist. She could come back later. She could ask for an extension. She could try to borrow money she had no way of repaying. None of it felt like a solution. It all felt like delay. Her phone buzzed softly in her bag, pulling her out of the spiral. Lily blinked, reaching inside and pulling it out, her brow furrowing slightly when she saw the unknown number on the screen. She hesitated before answering. "Hello, Miss Carter." The voice on the other end was calm, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes, my name is Daniel Reeves. I am calling from Cole Enterprises. You recently applied for a position with one of our partner locations." Lily frowned slightly, trying to remember. She had filled out so many applications over the past few weeks that they blurred together. Yes, I have applied to a few places," she said carefully. "We reviewed your file this morning," the voice continued, "and we would like to invite you in for an interview. Today, if possible." Lily glanced back at the counter, at the white paper bag waiting just out of reach. "Today," she repeated. "Yes," Daniel said. "Within the next hour. The address has been sent to your phone." Lily pulled the device away from her ear just long enough to see the message that had just appeared. A location downtown. A building she recognized, even if she had never been inside. Her heart skipped once, not from excitement, but from something else she could not quite name. Timing. It felt too precise. "Is everything all right?" Daniel asked. Lily hesitated. This did not make sense. Nothing about it did. But then again, nothing about the last 24 hours had made sense either. She looked back at the counter one more time, at the medication she could not afford, then down at the address glowing on her screen. 1 hour. One chance. Lily took a slow breath. "Yes," she said finally, her voice steadier now. "I will be there." She ended the call, her fingers tightening slightly around the phone before she slipped it back into her bag. Then she turned, walking toward the exit without another word. The pharmacist glanced up briefly as Lily passed, the small white bag still resting on the counter, untouched. Outside, the air felt sharper now, the city louder, as if something had shifted just beneath the surface. Lily stepped onto the sidewalk, her pace quickening as she moved toward the unknown, toward something she did not understand yet. And somewhere high above the streets, behind glass walls and polished floors, a man was already waiting to see what she would choose next. The building rose above the city like it belonged to a different world entirely, all glass and steel reflecting the afternoon light in sharp, clean lines that felt almost unreal compared to everything Lily had just left behind. She slowed her steps as she approached the entrance, her reflection catching briefly in the polished surface of the doors. For a second, she barely recognized herself. The same worn sweater, the same tired eyes, but somehow, standing here, everything felt out of place, like she had stepped into someone else's life by accident. Lily hesitated, her hand hovering near the handle, her thoughts flickering back to the pharmacy, to the small white bag still waiting on the counter, untouched. $80. She closed her eyes for half a second, then pushed the door open. The lobby was quiet, spacious, the air cool and controlled, carrying a faint scent of something expensive she could not name. Marble floors stretched beneath her feet, each step echoing slightly as she walked toward the reception desk. A woman in a tailored suit looked up immediately, offering a polite, practiced smile. "Good afternoon," she said. "How can I help you?" Lily adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. "I am here for an interview," she replied. "Lily Carter." The receptionist nodded, typing quickly before glancing back up. "Yes, Miss Carter. You are expected. Please take the elevator to the 32nd floor. Someone will meet you there." Lily nodded once. "Thank you." The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. The numbers climbed steadily, each floor passing in silence, her reflection staring back at her from the mirrored walls. She could hear her own heartbeat now, not fast, but present, reminding her that this moment mattered more than she was ready to admit. When the doors finally opened, the space beyond was quieter, more refined, with soft lighting and glass walls that overlooked the city below. A man stood waiting near the reception area, holding a tablet. "Miss Carter?" he asked. Lily nodded. "Yes. This way, please." He gestured toward a hallway, his tone professional but not unkind. Lily followed, her steps careful, her eyes taking in everything without meaning to. Offices lined the corridor, each one organized, precise, nothing out of place. It was the opposite of her world. Controlled, certain. They stopped in front of a large set of doors. The man turned to her. "They are ready for you," he said, offering a small nod before stepping aside. Lily hesitated for just a second, then reached for the handle and pushed the door open. The room inside was expansive, sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across a sleek conference table. At the far end of the room, someone stood with their back turned, looking out over the city. For a moment, Lily did not move. Something about the posture, the stillness, felt familiar in a way she could not immediately place. Then the man turned, and the world seemed to narrow in an instant. It was him, the same man from the cafe, the same quiet eyes, the same steady presence. But everything else was different. The worn jacket was gone, replaced by a perfectly tailored suit. The uncertainty had vanished, replaced by something composed, controlled, unmistakably powerful. Lily's breath caught, her mind struggling to connect the two versions of the same person standing in front of her. "You," she whispered, the word barely leaving her lips. He studied her for a moment, his expression calm, but there was something else there now, something intentional. "Hello, Lily," Ethan said, his voice steady, familiar in a way that made everything else feel unreal. "Thank you for coming." She stared at him, her thoughts racing, the memory of the night before colliding with the reality in front of her. "You were at the cafe," she said, her voice unsteady despite her effort to control it. Ethan nodded once. "I was." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with questions that had no immediate answers. Lily took a small step forward, her hands tightening slightly at her sides. "So this is not an interview," she said, the realization settling in piece by piece. Ethan held her gaze. "No," he replied quietly. "It is not." And in that moment, everything she thought she understood about the past 24 hours began to unravel. The silence in the room stretched just long enough to make Lily's chest tighten, her thoughts scrambling to catch up with what her eyes were seeing. The man who had stood in front of her in a worn jacket, asking for a simple cup of coffee, was now standing at the head of a polished conference room, framed by a skyline that seemed to belong to him. "You lied," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady, not rising, not breaking, just landing exactly where it needed to. Ethan did not flinch. "I did not tell you the truth," he replied, his tone calm, measured, as if he had already expected the accusation. Lily let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but without humor. "That is the same thing." She took another step forward, her eyes searching his face, trying to find something familiar in the version of him that felt so far away now. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do that?" Ethan held her gaze, not looking away, not softening, but not hard either. Just present. "Because I needed to know," he said. Lily frowned slightly. "Know what?" "Who you are," he answered simply. The words hung in the air, heavier than they sounded. Lily shook her head once, confusion and disbelief mixing in her expression. You needed to know who I am, she repeated slowly. So you pretended to be someone else? Ethan took a small step closer, closing just enough distance to make the conversation feel more real, more grounded. I have spent years surrounded by people who see what I have before they see who I am, he said, his voice quieter now, less formal, closer to the man she had met the night before. People who say the right things, do the right things, but only when it benefits them. Lily crossed her arms slightly, not defensive, but steadying herself. And you think I am different because I gave you a cup of coffee? Ethan shook his head. Not because of the coffee, he said. Because of what it cost you. That made her pause. Just for a second. He continued, his voice even. You did not know who I was. You had no reason to believe you would ever see me again. And you still chose to help. Lily looked away briefly, her jaw tightening. People help people, she said. It is not that complicated. It is, Ethan replied quietly. When you have nothing. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Not tense, just honest. Lily let out a slow breath, her arms lowering slightly as she looked back at him. So what now, she asked. What is this supposed to be? Ethan studied her for a moment before answering. An opportunity, he said. Lily's expression shifted, skepticism returning. For what? Ethan gestured lightly toward the chair at the table. Sit, he said. Please. She hesitated, then walked forward and took a seat, her movements controlled, her eyes never leaving him. Ethan remained standing for a moment longer before continuing. I want to offer you a position, he said. A paid role within one of our foundation projects. Housing support, community outreach, direct impact work. Lily blinked once, caught off guard by how specific it sounded. You do not even know me, she said. Ethan's gaze did not waver. I know enough, he replied. She leaned back slightly in the chair, processing, her fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the table. So this is what this is? She asked. You test people, and if they pass, you what? Change their lives. There was no accusation in her tone now, just a need to understand. Ethan took a breath, slower this time. No, he said. I give them a chance to change it themselves. Lily held his gaze, searching for something she could trust, something that felt real in a situation that still did not make sense. Then she shook her head slightly. You fired me, she said quietly. Ethan's expression shifted just enough to show he had expected that. No, he replied. Your manager did. Lily's lips pressed into a thin line. Because of you. Ethan did not argue. He did not deny it. Yes, he said. The honesty landed differently than she expected. Lily looked down at the table for a moment, her thoughts moving through everything at once. The job she lost, the money she did not have, the pharmacy, Emma. Then she looked back up. And, now you want to fix it, she said. Ethan's voice softened slightly. No, he said again. I want to give you something better. Lily studied him for a long second, then leaned forward just slightly, her eyes steady, clear. I do not want your pity, she said. Ethan shook his head immediately. It is not pity. Then what is it? She asked. He met her gaze without hesitation. Respect. And for the first time since she walked into the room, Lily did not look away. The word lingered in the air longer than anything else he had said. Respect. Not charity. Not pity. Respect. Lily let it settle, her eyes holding his, searching for any sign that it was just another carefully chosen word. But there was nothing rehearsed about the way he said it. No hesitation. No performance. Just certainty. She leaned back slowly in her chair, her fingers resting lightly against the edge of the table as her thoughts moved through everything that had brought her here. The rain, the coffee, the empty envelope, the pharmacy, Emma. All of it connected now in a way that felt almost too precise to be coincidence. You watched all of it, did you not? She asked quietly. Ethan did not look away. Yes, he said. Lily nodded once, absorbing that truth without flinching. Then you already know something, she continued. I did not help you because I thought it would lead to this. Ethan's expression softened slightly. I know. She tilted her head just a fraction, her voice steady. And I am not sitting here because you offered me a job. He waited. I am sitting here, she said, because I want to understand if this is real. The room fell quiet again, but this time it felt different. Not uncertain. Grounded. Ethan stepped closer, not imposing, just closing the distance enough to make the moment feel shared instead of observed. It is real, he said. Lily held his gaze for a long second, then exhaled slowly, something in her shoulders easing for the first time since she walked into the building. Then I have one condition, she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly. I am listening. Lily leaned forward just enough to make her words land clearly. Do not fix my life for me, she said. If I take this, it is because I earned it, not because you feel responsible. Ethan's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, not amused, but impressed. You did earn it, he replied. Long before you walked into this room. She studied him one last time, then nodded slowly, the decision forming without drama, without hesitation. Then I will take the opportunity, she said. The words felt simple, but they carried everything behind them. Ethan nodded once, turning slightly toward the table where a folder had been placed neatly beside a pen. We will start today, he said. Lily followed his gaze, then reached for the chair as she stood, her movements steady, deliberate. There is just one more thing, she added. Ethan looked back at her. What is it? Lily met his eyes, something softer there now, but still strong. I need to stop by a pharmacy first. Ethan paused for a fraction of a second, then nodded without question. Of course. The simplicity of his response caught her off guard more than anything else had. No offer to pay. No interruption. Just acceptance. Lily turned toward the door, her hand resting briefly on the handle before she looked back at him. And Ethan, she said, testing the name for the first time in this version of him. He looked up. Next time you want to know who someone is, she added, her voice calm, almost teasing now. You could just ask. For a second, something shifted in his expression, something lighter, something human. I will remember that, he said. Lily gave a small nod, then stepped out into the hallway, the door closing softly behind her. Hours later, the pharmacy door opened again, and this time, when Lily stepped inside, she walked straight to the counter, her hand reaching into her bag with quiet confidence. The small white bag was placed in her hands, the receipt printed, the moment simple but different.